Good afternoon, I'm Richard Higgs from Harold Stevens. I'm a later life financial planning specialist, and I thought it would be a good idea to take you through a tax outlook for 2024 for people either coming up to retirement, in retirement, or who are in later life. We've obviously got an interesting year ahead with the general election looming large over the UK, and it's important that we keep abreast of any changes to tax legislation or financial planning legislation to ensure that you can, exploit or at least have your financial affairs as tax efficiently arranged and organised as possible. So just a bit of context, I suppose, behind what's happened so far. We had the autumn statement in 2023, which was really billed as a balancing act, wasn't it, between the public funds and making tax cuts to hopefully grow the economy, or at least start to move the economy in the right direction. And the Chancellor did have the data to allow him to make some cuts to national insurance, so that helped people, I suppose, self-employed and employed people, but importantly for clients who are in retirement or in later life, or those receiving their state pension, the government continued with their policy of keeping up with the triple lock, and the state pension increased with inflation by 8.5%, which was excellent news for anybody in retirement in receipt of their state pension. Inheritance tax was completely unchanged, which wasn't a great surprise really to us. There wasn't a single statement or policy from the government to suggest there was going to be any inheritance tax changes, but there were a lot of rumours in the media and newspaper, as always, but actually there was nothing about the inheritance tax at all. And in fact, the forecast is that inheritance tax receipts are going to go to over £10 billion over the next decade. So really important that you are planning for inheritance tax, using your exemptions and allowances, and doing all the inheritance tax planning that I've talked about on any number of videos over the last few months. There was no changes made to anything like income tax or dividend allowances, capital gains tax. That was all kind of frozen, as were ISAs. So you're still only getting your £20,000 ISA allowance, despite rumours that that was going to be increased. There were some flexibilities introduced, so please get in touch if that's of interest to you. But then there's continued support for tax efficient investments like VCTs and EISs. So really important for people who are higher rate taxpayers or interested in kind of tax planning in general, that the government re-emphasise their support for those excellent tax efficient vehicles. 2023 was really the time, the most topical thing was pensions, where anybody with significant pensions, thinking about drawdown, final salary schemes, the lifetime allowance was abolished, and that was confirmed at the autumn statement in 2023. So, as I said, for anyone with significant pensions, it's going to be a very interesting year ahead, and something to look carefully at. So that brings us right up to date in terms of tax outlook for 2024. So now we've got the budget coming in on March the 6th. Again, it's the general election is going to be the overriding biggest theme over the coming 12 months. We know that we're going to have a general election, and generally speaking, the consensus is that Jeremy Hunt's going to make some tax cuts on March the 6th. We don't know where. He doesn't seem to have the data yet in order to put that budget together, but the general consensus is that there's going to be some sort of tax giveaway, which is obviously there to try and attract voters. Indeed, there are potential strategies to put two budgets together in 2024, one now in March and another one perhaps in the autumn before the general election, to give I suppose the Conservatives the ammunition to say they are the tax cutting party and to differentiate themselves from Labour in that way. So really interesting to see what happens over the next 12 months. Really important that you keep abreast of any changing legislation over that time, and you're making changes to your financial plans accordingly to make them most tax efficient. Again, there's a lot of inheritance tax rumours, as always, and again, there's nothing concrete from any of the Conservative Party strategists to say there is going to be a change. It's worth kind of noting Labour policy, given that they are 20 points ahead of Conservatives, so it is likely that they'll get in towards the end of the year. Actually, Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, has said that taxing inheritance tax cuts or anything like that is just not on Labour's agenda, and it's not part of it's not a priority. It's just not part of their policy making. So that's interesting to hear. And actually, if Conservatives did surprise us and do something in the budget in March to reduce inheritance tax, it's not inconceivable that kind of Labour would perhaps reverse those cuts. So again, quite interesting to see what's going to happen over the next few months. Interestingly, we have the budget on March the 6th, which is exactly a month before the tax year ends. So definitely get moving on your tax year-end planning, regardless of what's going to happen, especially if you are a higher rate taxpayer or even an additional rate taxpayer. It's really important to kind of use all the allowances that you have. Inheritance tax is frozen for, well, indefinitely perhaps, in terms of the allowances. So really important for those of you who've got inheritance tax issues to use the allowances that have been given to you. So to use your £3,000 annual exemption, use your gifts out of income, use your £250 gift per person, and do all your kind of trust work, your outright gifts, your investing in inheritance tax-free plans using business relief. Really just kind of take action and get the clock ticking on some of those plans. Remember, in April, the dividend allowance reduces again to just £500, and the capital gains allowance reduces to just £3,000. So it's really important if you have income, or especially if you've got assets that have grown over time, to at least use those allowances as best you can before the tax year end. So, as I said before, pensions is probably the most topical in terms of financial planning from last year. It was the biggest news of last year was the abolishment of the lifetime allowance. That's going ahead in April. So for anyone with final salary schemes, NHS pension, significant drawdown pensions that you've held off taking because of the lifetime allowance, it could be worth at least having a conversation as we move spring into the summer of this year, because Labour have said that they're going to abolish the abolishment of the lifetime allowance, or reverse that kind of legislation. So it could be worth a conversation, given that there might be a change of government at the end of the year, to do some planning around that. Remember, the lifetime allowance still exists for lump sums. So there's a monetary amount now of £268,000 tax-free lump sum, anything above which can be taxed. So there's definitely planning to be done around drawing down your pension or final salary pensions if you're coming up to retirement, or you're in retirement, or you haven't taken your pension because of the lifetime allowance. All of these things should instigate some sort of financial planning, certainly as we go into this year. Death benefits around members that have died before 75. Again, there's a monetary value now to that, so it's £1,073,000, just over that. So again, planning to be done around that. Remember the lifetime allowance protections that you may or may not have taken out in the past. You know, your fixed protection, your individual protection. Really important that you have those before applying for your pension, or you apply for those before you're taking your pension. And we have had some recent clarification that for anybody inheriting pensions where the members died before 75, you can go into a drawdown or an annuity completely free of tax. So that's also useful to know. As always, a lot going on this year, particularly with the election, particularly with the budgets, maybe even 2 budgets in 2024. So definitely if you're in retirement, you're coming up to retirement, you're in later life, you need to be keeping abreast of the changes this year, because there might be important financial planning decisions to be made which could make your overall financial plan and perhaps your legacy much more tax efficient. Hope that's been useful as a kind of a quick overview of what's going on at the moment. I would definitely seek to perhaps book an initial meeting just to go through your individual circumstances, and then we can kind of plan accordingly through the year. But hopefully that's been interesting, and we'll catch up with you perhaps in a month or 2 for an update on what's happened in the March budget. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.